All right, welcome back. This is Kevin McCain with the Idaho Art Classes and Kevin McCain Studios. And we're continuing this series on doing the basic features of the face. Today we're going to be drawing the nose. And again, this is part for the features part of my drawing 2, the 8th session. Again, we're just easing our way into the basic ideas and concepts of drawing basic features of the face. If you're a more advanced student, this might be, a little basic for you, but the idea is that when we draw a nose, I was going to first start with the center line, but let's talk about what we don't want to do. So sometimes when we draw noses, when we first start, we'll focus on the nostrils and might make them these little circles that kind of looks like a pig, it looks more like a pig than a person. And then sometimes we'll be like, well, we got to have the wings. We see there's wings on the nose, and so we'll do something like this, and then we end up with a snout. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be constructing a much more correct nose. You don't want to do this. You don't want the wings to make it look like a snout. So we're going to talk about the ways of doing this. I guess since I brought up the thing about nostrils, I might have started this too soon. But the nostrils actually look more a lot of times. Now people have different characteristics of nostrils. Don't want you to think that they're all the same, but they look more like a comma. And even this is probably could be, we come in here like this. This is really far across from my drawing hand, so I'm trying to keep out of the way of the camera. But you're going to have, and this again, this looks too much like a tadpole, but still we're going to have nostrils that are going to look a little more like this, or even more like a comma. This would be the outside, again, where we might have, again, really what looks like a little comma for the nostril. But that's just some very basic. So we're going to start with the basic anatomy, the basic structure of the nose. This is for the portrait in the front view. So since we're dealing with the portrait in the front view, we're going to go ahead and start with, a center line, right? So we're going to start with our little center line, hopefully one without curves. As far as that goes. And we're going to break down the basic construction of the nose. Now, the first part is where the nose transitions onto the forehead. You'll see is referred to this, the keystone shape, and it's called the glabella. And the reason they call it the keystone shape is that if you have an arch, you have a little shape that holds the arch up that looks like a rounded trapezoid. And it holds the arch. The arch presses against that. If you take that piece out, the entire arch falls down. So the glabella is, again, this keystone shape for the head where it transitions from the nose up to the forehead. Now, this right here is not a great triangle. So if I want to do a better triangle, because I'm basically just cutting a triangle, is all that this is. I need this equal distance on both sides, and then you can go ahead and make sure that you're hitting the same place on my center line. This is just a symmetry thing. It's for mirroring, another technique to help your drawing, so you get a little better mirroring. Again, this has to be equal to that, and then this angle you come down and bring the angle equal distance off the center line. So this point here should be the same distance as that point there. If they're not, well, then it won't be a symmetrical angle. Looks like that's actually off a bit. Should be closer to right there. And then you can take, we can always cut this later, but we went past this to hit the center line, and that becomes, and we'll mark that because this to be a triangle that has equal angles. This is almost equilateral, meaning that this side is all the same. But to be an isosceles triangle is also symmetrical if we cut it in half. So You get two right triangles on either side. But maybe that's too much geometry. But the idea is that we're using these particular ideas to help us with our construction. So then we cut the tip off, and that way you can have a much better trapezoid. Because a trapezoid is just a modified triangle. So then what we're going to do is we're going to keep the bridge just a rectangle. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and bring this bridge down, and we'll try to keep these as straight as we possibly can. Right, we're going to keep the bridge, again, just a basic rectangle. And for symmetry's sake, it better be the same distance off either side. This seems like this is has gotten a little wider off this side. So we might have to come and add a little bit to this side, just a scotch, but it's pretty close. So on the end of this, we're going to have the ball of the nose. Okay, so this is going to be the ball of the nose, this small circle. Okay, and if this is, we're using construction, so if this is a constructed shape, and we're marrying these shapes, as people would say, it's supposed to come right through the point of that rectangle, so that way it's going to be more symmetrical. I kind of missed it a little bit. So I'm marking that point to give me, as I'm making my little circle, to get this a little bit better into symmetry. Like so. Now, the profile of the nose shows us that, for our nose, we actually have a little cone. This is supposed to be, the end, or the ball, which is what this is. And then we have, the cone has a base, so, a cone is actually, hopefully we know what a cone is. We've actually got, where you're taking, a cone instead of a point on there, the cone's been rounded off, so it leaves a circle and then almost like a dome, but not quite. It's a little more pointed than a dome. But the idea is that it's going to have a base. This right here would be the base. That would be the base of the cone, this right through here. Okay, so whenever you're looking at the nose, sometimes people will see this circle and they go, wait a minute, I'm seeing another circle that's wider out. What is it? What is that? That's the base of the cone. Now, it's not exactly a symmetrical cone like this. It's actually a little bit pointed on one side and flatter on the other. But the idea is that it still has a rounded cone-like shape on the end of that nose. And again, if this doesn't make sense what we're looking at, this would then be, the nostril, this would be the septum, this would be the wing for this nose and profile. So, again, we've got this circle, which again is that cone of the nose. The top of it. It's this part right here. So that's what the ball of the nose is this part. This wouldn't be seen unless it was made out of glass. But so this would be darker if we wanted to try to kind of describe that this is unseen, but there. This is what we're talking about, that outside point, or this point right here. This might be a little light, but this is what we're talking about, that rounded top of that nose. Okay, and so what we're going to have, we have under here the septum. This is what comes back and connects to the face. And so for the septum, we're going to make this look like it's a snow cone or something like that, or an ice cream cone or something of that nature. We're going to put coming off of here, and if we wanted to, we could double check to see, again, if we're symmetrical by working right to left of the center line. In other words, bring this over and saying, hey, is this the same distance as this right here? And again, this is out a little bit. Okay, and then where it starts, again, we could check this. Is this distance the same as that distance off the center line? This is again as a center line. And a center line can help us with symmetry. That's kind of squeaking. You have your charcoal pencils will do that. So that's just so center lines, or in this case, a center line. That's my center line right there. And we're using this to mirror or to check for symmetry. That's the same on both sides. Now, some people say, why would you take all that? Why would you take all that time to mirror? Why don't you just draw over and over and over again, and you'll just naturally become more symmetrical? And it's true to a point. And some people have just a natural, innate ability to mirror very easily, and so it's not a problem for them. But for other people, and I worked professionally in the industry for 20 years. I've been drawing for 30 years, and still. This can, I just use it to help myself. The great philosopher, a Greek philosopher talked about knowing yourself. I can't remember if it was Plato or not, but anyways, but the idea is, well, why wouldn't I use it if I need to? If I don't, well, then I won't worry about it. But off of this is again the septum, and this is the underside, this right here, this little piece that connects this is the outside edge of the ball, by the way. It's softer up top, on the bottom than it is up top. But the septum is this space right to there where the nose connects to the face. And if we look straight on, it's the division between the nostrils. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to take that comma shape we talked about, and we're going to place this comma shape not all the way at the bottom, because the septum actually turns in and back on itself, and it goes into and becomes part, goes into the nostril. At least that's what we're going to do with it. There's actually a very thin little shelf that's between. It actually doesn't turn in. There's actually a tiny little shelf around here, a little space. We're not going to deal with that because it's so small that it begins to give it too much, much more voice than it should have, and so we're just going to go ahead and turn this in, which it does, and we're not going to worry about the little shelf underneath here for right now. I mean, it's really small, and if you're not careful, it can look strange. If I'm shading, I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath here for the shelf, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So we're going to start with our little comma shape. Now, again, the hardest part that people have with a nose is mirroring the nose. That's the biggest thing that people have a problem with. And so what we're going to do to help us with this is we're going to look for some points. So I'm going to take like where the lowest point is, and I'm going to try to take a perpendicular line across that center line so that I know if this is touching the line, it's got to touch the line somewhere over there. And it touches this line right about here. So I could take that point, come off of here, come over here off the center line. Again, we're just mirroring. We're using mirroring technique to deal with symmetry. If I know that this is, the tallest that will be, bring a straight line over. Now again, do all artists do this? Well, again, some have really good eyes and they may not need to. But most artists, even professional artists, will do some form of this, working right to left of the center line to help themselves have a better sense of symmetry. We're going to bring this straight over. Where does this start? This starts here. It's on that line too, or just barely above it. So now we've got 3 points. This point, and it's going to be much easier to try to, and where does this like change direction? And we can go ahead, which is about right here. And we can say, all right, well, let's check that. Bring this to there. Bring this over here. And so this is about where that changes direction. So then we can go ahead and go, all right, this is almost right on top of one another, but we go, okay, well, this kind of comes here, it comes down, and then it comes to an angle there. This almost looks like a dot-to-dot thing, but the idea is that we're looking for points where we know where those points are. So that way, when we draw this, we have a much easier time mirroring or getting closer to mirroring. Now, like right through here, this needs to be a nice transition. right? And so this is pretty close to that. Now there's a couple places I need to tuck this up a little bit more here. This might need to come in a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty close. It's close enough that I could actually even leave it. Some people, when they drew a front view, they're just all out of whack. Even amazing artists, I'm like, well, and they never learn, they just draw and draw and draw, but they don't use mirroring. And if you don't use mirroring, it will show in your drawing. It's a phenomenal thing. Why wouldn't you want to use it? Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take like a little circle. It's almost an ellipse. Well, it is an ellipse. Who am I kidding? It's almost an ellipse. It is an ellipse. And I'm going to use that to kind of give me a target for the wings a little bit. This is a little bit high, but it just gives me, if you look at the nose and you take an ellipse, you can kind of see where the wings are going to kind of transition and all the way up and then onto the nose. We're also going to look for, again, there's this, and we see it more on the side. We don't see it as much. Once it gets into the, once it hits the bridge, we don't see it as much as it comes under, into the septum. But there's a rhythm you're going to see. That's the outside edge of the cone. And the reason that becomes important is because this will usually attach to that whatever circle it is. Some people's circles are more open, it's a little taller. Some people's are more closed. Look for that rhythm, but that's where the outside edge of this cone is going to hit. And not only that, this is also where the wings attach. So sometimes the people will bring in the wings all the way up onto the nose like this, and that's not what happens. It actually comes around and it slams into the back cone of the nose, and the cone is transitioning, up and behind the bridge just a little bit. And so again, we're going to put the wing on the nose, which again is just really, we're going to put this little C curve on here. This C curve, we're going to bring it around so that it goes into the nose. This is, we're going to bring a curve around here, so this goes into that nose. So it's open. We're trying to have the septum twist back and in on itself, so it goes into the nose. All right. Now, depending on who I'm drawing, some people, the wings of their nose are going to be in line with the septum. Some are up a lot more. Some are, again, somewhere in between there. Look at the person's nose. See what the nose is doing. Noses are so interesting, and to me, they're even more fascinating than say eyes, because the nose, we many times will just go, oh, it's just a lump on the face, but it's not. Hopefully, you're seeing by what we're doing, it's more than just a lump. It's actually quite a complicated, sort of a feature. And we want to give it its due, so to speak. We want to go ahead and have the idea of all these different little forms. If we don't have them, it won't read like a nose. This is pretty important. We also have the sides of the nose. So you have the side of the nose coming this way, and the side of the nose coming this way. Now, let's say, I actually have to bring this down because of the way the face is actually constructed. Okay. So I just want you to understand. So if we did the basic, the most basic idea of the nose that projects, we're basically going to end up with something that's going to look like this. So if we simplify the nose down to its most simple, boil it down to the most basic idea of this feature, we'd have the bridge, we'd have the glabella, we'd have the underside of the nose, so we're going to go ahead and have this come over here, have this go over there. This again is the underside of the nose, and then we would have this come down like this. These are the most general, most basic planes of somebody's nose. and then this would go, you know, into the eye cavity. This you'd start to break this into facets, almost like it's carved out of quartz or something. Well, if that goes up there, then the brow would come up here. But the idea is that the nose itself, its basic idea is that we have, you know, a left side, we have a right side, and we have the underside, and we have the bridge. And that's what all these planes are defining, is that we have all these different parts of the, okay, that'll be fine. We already have all these different parts of the nose. We're going to go ahead and we're getting a little bit of issues here with the symmetry. Well, then we're going to work all the way across the center line, right to left of it. If this is then going to come down to here, this angle changes. Is this angle starting in the same place as that one? I don't think it is. We're going to move that in. You know, again, you can start to get this worked out using these concepts, using the ideas of symmetry, and using a center line. So again, this right here would be underneath the nose. Sorry, I think I had my hand on there and I was really moving that around. So again, this would be the underside if we had a light source coming from this direction, and if it was from the side, not from the front, not from the back, this is just going to be a straight side shot. And if it was, you know, maybe some of you have seen if you're doing if you ever see someone put a cone on there, if I'm seeing the top of the cone, that means this would be coming around the front. If I didn't see the top of the cone, let's say I had a cone that looked like this. Now this is supposed to be flat, so that means it's straight from the side. Let's say we had a cone like this. Well, that means it's back and coming in from this direction. That's what those cones mean, because this cone would say I can't see the back side. And if I can't see the back side of that cone, well, that means I'm only seeing the front edge. That means that cone would have to be pointed away from me, and therefore the light would be coming from behind and then at this angle. So that's the whole idea of those cones. If you've ever seen somebody do that, this is going to be just straight side lighting. So I just have a triangle. Okay. So if this was true, that means it'd be hitting this plane first. So for our form shadows, this would be the light value. This would be our middle values, or half tones as some people call them. So that would be our half tone value. This would then be, again, the side that's in our dark tones, so it would need to be darker. Okay. And sometimes I have people go, wait a minute, hold the phone. If those are dark tones, why is this one darker? Well, because this is underneath. These planes are all vertical. So this is underneath it. It's going to have far less light than anything on the vertical plane, because this is a horizontal plane. Okay? So this is going to be darker than any of these planes. Okay? So that's the big difference on that. And so again, this would, now again, there might be some reflected light. Whoops. Trying to get a little more control on there, and instead I'm just shaking the board all over the place. So there we go. So again, so this is going to be the darkest. And then if we've got this coming this direction, there's going to be a cast shadow, right? So there would be a cast shadow on this thing. We're not going to work out, we could actually work out the exact cast shadow in perspective if we wanted to. Now this is the wild card, because, and it really depends on what's happening. It can depend on what the person's wearing and stuff like that, because we'll talk about why in a second. But if this is a vertical plane, cast shadows are always darker than form shadows. Okay. However, that's only for the planes that are on the vertical. We have a plane here that's on the horizontal. And so this one here might be, this one right here might be darker than these, but it may or may not be darker than the underside of the nose. And why I said it might depend on what you're doing. First, you have a lip. You know, our lip comes out a little bit. And what happens is we'll get some light that'll hit the lip and reflect back up under the nose. However, what will really should be a game changer is if someone's wearing a white t-shirt down here, the light's going to be hitting that white t-shirt and bouncing up into the underside of the nose. In which case, the cast shadow is going to be darker and the underside will be slightly lighter of the two. Now, if someone has a black t-shirt, that black value will reflect up into the bottom of the nose. And if that's the case, the bottom of the nose is darker and the cast shadow will be lighter. And there's other lighting scenarios where this can, you know, because light bounces all over the place. But those are two scenarios where it would change which of these two would be lighter. You're going to want to look at who you're drawing. Be aware of what they're wearing makes a difference. You know, a little bit about, you know, even, you know, skin tone and other things can make a difference, and these different things. So we want to be aware of those. Again, if this is changing direction, because it does, the glabella is coming up, and this one's coming out. They're two different angles. If anything ever changes, if the plane changes direction, it changes value. However, so this would be my light middle value. This would be my darker middle value. Because middle values have a light and dark side, but they should both be lighter than the dark value. So I could come in here and just make sure that again that my dark values are dark enough. And if the dark values go darker, well then again the cast shadow has to make sure that it's darker. You know, it's all about these relationships. Why are we? And then of course this would all be. This actually needs a touch right there, and this would be coming back, and this would be the eye socket. And of course the eye socket is a ledge. And the eye socket in there is going to be very, very, very dark. It's going to be in shadow. Right? Anyways, this would be that. Of course, this one would be in shadow too, and we could start to put some value on here. What does this have to do with this? Well, the basic value relationships of this basic wedge is very similar to what happens on the nose. And the most important part is right on the underside of this ball, we're going to get a little shadow shape that comes around the ball, then it comes down the cone, and then it wraps around the wings of the nose. Now this would be if it's just from above. Now if it's above and over, well suddenly this can cast a shadow onto the wing, and so and that's if we took this same shadow sort of scenario where we have again the light coming in like this. We might not even see the light over here on the wing, or we might just see a little sliver of it because there's a cast shadow from this cone casting onto the wing of the nose. We're going to at least go ahead and put this in. This is the underside of the nose going back towards the face. So this is always going to be darker. Okay. You know, we have the nostrils. The nostrils are going to get really dark because they're going, you know, into the face. Very little light down there. So we can go ahead and darken in the, you know, you darken in the nostrils. Now the nostrils should not be all the same value. Right now that looks a little too dense. But the idea is that they're going to be getting darker as they go back into those nostrils. That's always going to be the case. So, you know, we have the underside. Now, of course, these are round, so you're going to get a little bit of a core shadow underneath here, and a core shadow coming down here, and a core shadow going around, because these are round forms. You're going to get some reflected light happening. You're going to get all kinds of fascinating stuff on this. But let's put this basic value on the nose. Well, okay, well this would be the light side. Now these are two different planes. The light might be closer to this plane where it's really light, and this might be a little, you know, kind of like this thing where they're slightly different angles. So if we got the light, again, coming from here, this two right here, this is maybe where this is coming out and this is coming over, two different planes. One coming this way and the other one going up the hill. Let's say this one's closer to being parallel to the light. Well, then this would have this subtle change. In other words, like that. This is going to be our light values. And usually it's not going to be bright white, so we'll put a light sort of little value on there. Again, this angle to this angle is going to, this is going up, and this one here is coming out just a little bit. There's going to be a plane change. And so again, they're going to be different values. So keep that in mind as you're drawing this thing. All right, so like I say, we can put a little tone on here because usually it's not going to be pure white. This is going to be our middle value. Now the ball of the nose is going to change direction a little bit. So and you also have some capillaries near the skin. So there's some pigmentation going on with the nose, but we want just enough to, and this is going to be a much flatter sort of idea because we're not trying to render. This is just basic forms. There's all kinds of stuff that would start to happen. There'd be core shadows wherever it's going into shadow, all that sort of stuff. Again, we have that the nose itself is probably casting a shadow onto itself. So maybe this is, again, this is the dark tones. So if that's, that's the dark tones. This would also be the dark tones. Usually this is going to be, coming out a little bit. So this might be a little darker back here. There's going to be all this subtlety that we can start to look at. But for right now, we're just dealing with just the basics. And if we can get the basics of this, we'll have a nose that will project. If we don't have the basics of this, the nose won't project at all. It'll seem like a flat nose, and it won't be coming off the face. So once I've got this is also, again, two different values. This is coming out, so it's slightly in a little more shadow because it's going back, and so this is almost not on the underside like the nose here, but somewhere between this plane and that plane is this one, and so it's going to be darker than this plane here. So again, we're going to go ahead, and this is what I'm thinking of as you're shading. You're thinking of the basic planes, and then you're looking for it. Where does it change? How much darker is it? How much is it going to do, be different than what I thought? This would also have a cast shadow. This cast shadow might come off, and even this is probably going to cast a shadow back onto the cheek. And so again, we'd want to keep this in mind, that this is going to be, if this is casting a shadow, the whole nose is going to cast a shadow. And again, if we miss that while we are drawing this thing, it's not going to look right. So again, we're not, I'm not drawing a particular person's nose. I'm just drawing the ideas of what would be happening on somebody's nose like this. And as I'm thinking about it, and let's say I am drawing somebody's nose, I'm going to be looking for that. So I go, oh yeah, that's what that should be doing. That goes right with what I thought I would be doing. Oh yeah, there's that core shadow, right where that light turns away from it. Oh yeah, there's some reflected light there. That's, all these different things. We want to be, if we can't identify what we're looking at, if we can't identify why it's doing what we're doing, at least for me, I have no shot at being able to draw it with any sort of accuracy. I'm not going to have any luck at trying to get, some sort of feeling of reality to that object, unless I know, again, what that object is doing. Now, there's all kinds of nuances that we are not addressing in this, and that's fine. This is just very, very basic ideas. The thing that is really going to help this nose project is the cast shadow, because that says, oh, this object must project because there's a shadow being cast by it. It has to therefore be coming up off that. So if you have a nose that doesn't have a cast shadow, that nose is going to feel flat as a pancake. So again, just the moment, now this isn't the right value, but even by just putting in a value here, this is already implies that that's a cast shadow, therefore implies a projection. So again, this is, just the basic idea of putting value on a nose. The cast shadow should be darker than the form shadow. So this down here should be darker than that over there in general, because these are generalities. These we aren't doing little particularities on this thing. This is just very general stuff. If I'm drawing somebody's nose and I'm dealing with particularities, there's going to be, you know, details, character things, subtle nuances of form, you know, whatever term you want to use. There's going to be all kinds of little variations that are going to come into play. And that's what happens. This is the basic idea. If this isn't right, it won't look right. But then you have to go, okay, what's the next level? Well, the next level is all the individual forms and how they're changing. And if those aren't right, it won't look right. And then what's the third level? Well, the third level is the details. You know, and if I'm dealing with, you know, especially if you're going into photorealism or hyperrealism or something, and you're dealing with details, the first thing that it has to read is the basic form. That's what this is. Just the basic light to dark relationships. And those have to read. And then you have the individual relationships, like, oh, this is a cone. Well, where does it start? Where does it stop? Where's the light hitting it? How does it darken as it comes underneath versus how it darkens as it's over here? If this is underneath, it's probably going to be darker than over here, unless we have somebody wearing a white shirt. There's a, you know, reflected light going on. There's some sort of strange scenario. So again, as an artist, you're constantly trying to understand this. And then once you get that, which this is now what this is, just the basic light to dark. And then from there, you would go, oh, wait a minute, this bridge isn't a straight line. This bridge kicks out. Where it attaches to the nasal bone is the whitest part, then it comes down, and then it flares out again. And different people have different, you know, types of bridges. Different people have noses that are flatter. Some people have noses that project more. All these different things are going to change how the value wraps that form. So right now we just have enough idea to call this a nose, and that this nose is coming up off the paper. And who knows? I guess this, you know, whatever. There's going to be a highlight somewhere on the beak, on the nose, as we might call it, as far as that goes. But again, so we want all the basic, you know, light values. This should then be middle values. If it's not dark enough, we're going to have to darken it more. So this looks like light, medium, and dark. And then we're going to have, okay, light, medium, and dark. That's there. Next, what do we got next? This has to go darker because it's underneath. All right. Got it darker because it's underneath. Next. Oh, cast shadow. Okay. And, you know, you're just going to keep doing it and keep doing it. I have barely any information on this nose, and it's starting to feel like it has some dimension. Just a little bit. When we went next, we'd go, okay, well, this is a cone. What is the basic value? How does it change around that cone? Oh, this cone is this is the base, but this is part of the cast shadow. What does that little area look like where it transitions between those two? What about this transition where this is the ball of the cone, but this is the side of the cone? And a lot of times you'll have, again, where the little wing hits that, it gets a little bit darker and then gets lighter as it starts to come around to show this plane is at a different angle. You know, and there's going to be a little bit of a ridge, you know, as this starts to get, and that's a little bit too much because it's too dark, and it's also supposed to be in light. But it's going to get along the ridge line, it's going to get a little bit darker and then get lighter as it transitions down the hill. Little stuff like this all of a sudden starts to give things, you know, their look of reality, because it's all about form shadows. It's not about the little stuff. And when we're doing like pores in the skin, you cannot have something too dark right there, or it'll look like, you know, a blackhead or something like that, or it look like a freckle or what have you. So it's gotta, you know, the basics have to be there, is all that means. And so this is the basic idea of dealing with the nose. And we can use this construction again for any bit of this. If we're doing a 3/4 nose, well, then the center line is going to come out. But again, and we're going to be dealing with some perspective issues, but we're still going to have, well, that's not right on that center line. There we go. So all of a sudden we're going to have, you know, this is going to be there. Now this actually has a little bit of projection, but we're not going to worry a ton about that right now. There would still be a little bit of the ball. The ball would be, again, projecting a little bit. A little too much, actually. because this becomes an ellipse, right? Because this is now, that circle is in perspective. But not only that, but it actually raises. So would there be some raising up off of there? The little snow cone would be coming back and in on the face, so forth and so on. You still have the wing of the nose. You'd have the side of the cone comes up here into the. Now it's a little softer than that. And actually, and then transitions up here onto the nose, and then this is the side of the nose, and then this comes up here, and this is the glabella. You're still going to use these basic. You can use these basic construction ideas. This seems a little long, truth be told, for a 3/4 nose. This original rectangle. Of course, I'm not putting it on a face and all that sort of stuff, but the idea is that maybe this is either a little small, and just those changes, the glabella and the ball, all of a sudden it's looking better. And then you're going to have a little bit, depending on the 3/4 view, you might have a little bit of the wing on this side that you're seeing, but you can still use this construction. You'd be seeing just a little bit of the far side. This throws some people sometimes because they'll be like, well, this is the bridge. What's that light right there? It's a little bit of seeing the other side. And so, depending on the view that you've got, you'll have that sometimes. And this is just, again, the beginning. As you then went out, you'd be like, okay, this bumps out, this comes in, this then rounds, and this projects out across that nose. That nose then comes here, and that nose comes down and back and in for the septum. So, we could then develop this into a far better nose, as far as that goes. And we're going to be putting some stuff on here. This is just a basic nose. We're going to go into, all right, what's an intermediate nose? What's the anatomy? What are the planes? How can we do an advanced nose where we're doing photorealism? We're going to do some of those where we're actually taking it to a much higher level of finish than what we're doing here. And so this, again, is just very basic nose. This is how to deal with the features of the face. Again, with the profile, we can do this, though I rarely do it with the profile as much, just because, again, this becomes very, very squished. Again, you would have the ball, but now you actually start to get some more of the projection of the ball coming off of there. And then you'd have this come down into the septum like so. And then you get the nostril over here like so. And then you'd have, the wing of the nose. And then you have the side of the cone, so forth and so on. And, so you start to get, I might still use a little bit of it just to kind of start out with, but sometimes it can seem just a little strange. So I'll actually box it out a little bit more like this. Kind of box the basic changes in. Still think about this, but it can be a little bit easier many times when we're dealing with a profile nose, at least for me, to, again, go ahead and box that out and start to put the nose together that way. Again, this would be a nose in profile, or close, not quite. It looks like it's just barely at a very extreme, almost profile, but not quite. But hopefully you get the idea. This would be here, and this would be coming down the face, and this would be coming under, and the mouth would be coming out, and you'd have the lips would be starting, and so forth and so on, as far as that goes. So it's supposed to be just the side of the face and all that good stuff, as far as that goes. So, or a side view of the nose, and of course this out here would be this is strange. That can't be. Oh, the nose is the wrong angle is what's happening. Yeah. That's why that nose was looking weird. It was just the brow would have been too far out. We brought the brow out, and the brow is way back here behind the mouth. That ain't right. That ain't the way it works. That ain't how it happens. But anyways, that would be something that's a little bit more closer to what would actually be happening. This would have to still move back a little bit. We're not doing profiles today, but again, it's the teeth are always in front of the brow. You got to be careful that you don't have they're both in line, or the brow comes out in front of the teeth. If you have a brow like that, again, it just ain't right. But anyways, I digress. So again, this is about the nose, and so use this when you're drawing. it can really help you. It's a great to think about the basic planes. Again, we started with this trapezoid shape. We then had the rectangle. the ball. The ball then comes down into this little cone that becomes the, this down here is the septum of the nose. We then have the wings of the nose, all that good stuff. Sure, why not? As far as that goes, you have the back part of the cone that's going to be appearing on this drawing. Okay, and then actually isn't casting very far shadow, but and then you'd have again the outside of the cone, the sides of the nose, all that good stuff. And so go ahead again, when you're drawing, give this a shot. You'll draw better noses. All right. This has been Kevin McCain with Kevin McCain Studios and Idaho Art Classes. You guys take care, and if you like this video, go ahead and share it with people. Let them know about it. All right. You have a good day. Bye bye now.